Hey guys, I'm Jonas. This week we're back working on the Kandi Kart and our 420 Predator. We got in a pile of parts this week so we can continue moving forward with this build. We got our stage 1 kit from Go Power Sports, which includes the exhaust, the air filter adapter to go to the pod style filter, some 65-pound valve springs, a different jet to go in the carb, and we finished up doing the governor delete on this engine and got that blocked off here. I do leave the low oil sensor in there. It's going to be unplugged, but I just leave that in there. Really all I'm worried about is that governor. You know, I get asked every now and then, why do you need to actually remove that? Why can't you just disconnect the arm and just leave the rest of the governor in the engine? And the reason being is that plastic governor in there, when you're over revving this engine, that plastic just can't withstand that amount of velocity, you know, spinning that fast, you know, under that many RPMs. So you're a lot safer off just removing it and getting it out of there instead of just waiting for that plastic to explode and then all those pieces go banging around inside your engine and break things. So you're better off just getting that governor out of your engine. This 40 series torque converter setup that I found on Amazon. It was a little bit cheaper than the one that Go Power Sports offers, but this was the only one on Amazon that came with the steel backing plate, a little bit heavier duty back plate setup. A lot of the ones that you see just have a stamped back plate, and I think these are quite a bit beefier than the stamped ones are. So it is the aftermarket, you know, knockoff version of the Comet clutch. And then we've got the 2600 series stall converter that came from Go Power Sports to go in this clutch so we can raise our stall on it a little bit to give us a little more power getting up and out of the hole. And then from Go Power Sports, I got the different sprocket to go on the axle that's on this Kandi Kart. That's hopefully going to bolt right on there, but it'll match up with the 420 chain that we're going to be putting on this torque converter kit. Then I also found just a cheap muffler from Amazon. We're going to try throwing that on there. It was the right size diameter that I can cut that pipe down from Go Power Sports, and it should fit right in there. So we're going to see how that fits. And then we also got our 420 chain that's going to be going on here, and the throttle cable, a couple other little miscellaneous parts. So we're going to see if we can get this torque converter swapped out, the parts in there swapped out, and then we'll see if we can go ahead and get it thrown on the engine here. So we got our axle flipped over, got the new sprocket mounted on there. Really wasn't anything too bad. You had to get these bearings to slide out just far enough that you could get the axle to drop down through the grooves, which was a little bit of a pain, but really wasn't anything too bad. So got that flipped over. We'll mess with moving our brake mount, our brake caliper mount over to this side later once we know that everything else is going to work here. So now we're going to start getting our tubing in here that the engine is going to set down on. My plan is to run one piece of square tubing across the back here as like a cross member, and then run two pieces of square tubing from that up to this factory tube going across the front that will be at just the right width for our engine plate to sit down on and weld to. So I got all my pieces cut here, and I made sure that the cart frame itself is level so that then when I put this piece in, I can make it level, and that'll kind of help line things up a little bit better. It took plenty of measurements going forwards and backwards square, trying to get this piece set in there as square with the rest of the machine as I can. But the reason that I wanted this pipe, or my rails, to be level when the machine is just sitting here, so that when the engine is sitting on there, it's level. It's not leaned real far back or forwards or anything, and that's going to help me keep from having any sort of fuel problems in the carburetor, you know, getting too much fuel or not enough fuel by that engine not being level, and also help with any oil issues. If you have your engine at a really steep angle for a long period of time, you can run into issues with starving it for oil because all the oil is sitting in one corner of the engine. So you want it when you're just at normal ride height and even with a person sitting in there. So I made it where the front of the pipe is just a little bit higher than the back of the pipe, so that when somebody sits in there and the suspension squats a little bit, the pipe will level out, and then the engine will be perfectly level at normal ride height. Now granted, when you're riding it, it's going to be going up and down, but it's always going to be trying to get back to normal ride height where the engine's going to be perfectly level. So that's how I'm going to set it up. Now basically I don't have the luxury of being able to slide this sprocket back and forth on the axle since the hub is welded on there. So I have to set the engine in here kind of on top of my rails and get the two sprockets lined up perfectly before I can tack these rails into place and then tack the engine mounting plate down on top of them. So we've got this engine plate mounted in here just how I want it. Everything's all welded in good and solid. So now we're ready to set the engine in there, get it bolted down, and then we can start figuring out our chain and our brake setup and all the other wiring and everything that we need to run from back here. Alright, well, we got the engine bolted down, we've got the chain on, I hooked up a temporary battery as well as a temporary fuel bottle. We've got oil in the engine. We had to use the battery because we ended up having to remove the pull rope assembly because it was hitting the shock on this side. So it clears without the pull rope, but it would have been nice to have a backup pull rope, but I may have to try and figure something else out there for now. But we're just going to see. I've got my throttle linkage hooked up here to just be able to run it manually. I don't have my throttle cable hooked up, but should be ready to fire this thing up, see how it runs. Well, there you have it, fired right up, no problem. Seems to run pretty decent. I'm sure we'll have a little bit of tuning to do on it once we kind of get everything else done and let it get broke in just a little bit before we do a lot of screwing with it. We got some other things we've got to get finished up here before we can try to do any kind of test ride on it. We've got to get our brake caliper mounted back here. We've got to get a battery box and a battery figured out for it. The fuel tank, I think we're going to try to reuse the original fuel tank off of here, but we'll have to find a different petcock to go in it, one that's not vacuum operated. Hopefully we can get one that just has a regular shutoff on it. So I'll see what I can find there. We got a couple other little things to button up here, and then we may be ready for a test drive.